It's the second week of August, and finally, there's a bit of worry rising up within you that, oh my god, I have an exam to give in just under 4 months from now. That is the CLAT 2027 exam. You don't know what to do, you've not done anything so far, you don't know how to do it, you don't know when to do it. All of that will be covered in this video. Hi, I'm Shourya. I'm a second year at NALSAR Hyderabad, and in this video, I'll give you a complete guide for every single aspect of your preparation for CLAT 87 starting from scratch. So, you've done nothing till now, you don't know what to do, everything will be covered in this video. So, without further ado, let's get started. So you have, I would say, three primary things that you have to do. You have a current affairs backlog that you have to overcome. You have to build your concepts, and you have to get used to the CLAT paper, or the pattern of the paper. The current affairs backlog, if you're starting now and you've done nothing till now, you have 8 months worth of current affairs from December of last year till July to overcome, to basically memorize before you can even be up to date, before you can then do August, September, October, and half November to be completely done with current affairs. That'll be your biggest hurdle by far, I would say. But that's hurdle number one. Hurdle number two would be conceptual clarity, conceptual foundations for the other subjects, because the other four subjects, although they are largely practice based, you still need to know some concepts, right? You need to know the concept that you're going to apply in those practice questions. So that's going to be a second hurdle, because you have no idea what those concepts are as of yet. And thirdly, you will have to get used to the very act of giving the CLAT exam. The very act of sitting in a chair for 2 hours straight, reading dense bodies of text, reading dense walls of text, and then applying your mind to questions, applying logic, all those things. You have to get used to the entire theatrics of it as well. So these three are your primary hurdles that you'll have to overcome in the course of the next 4 months. Now we can get into the month by month breakdown of things as well. Firstly, I do want to preface this by saying that uh, I don't think there's a hard, like a rigid division month by month. I will give you a general skeleton that, okay, in let's say August, September, you should do this. Then September to October, you should do this. October to November, this. But notice that I'm saying 2 months, August and September to October, rather than just 1 month or month by month. I'm dividing things because ultimately it all depends on how much free time you have. If you're a dropper, naturally you'll have a lot more free time. If you're a school-going student, however, if you're doing your board exams alongside CLAT, then naturally you'll have a lot less time. Especially right now, if I remember correctly, I had pre-boards around this time as well when I was giving CLAT. So if you have pre-boards right now as well alongside your CLAT preparation, naturally you'll have a bit less time to really dedicate to CLAT directly. So that's something. I'm For that case, I'm giving you 2 months, let's say August and September. Or if you're a dropper, then you can do just August, and then you can enhance the amount of time you give to other things if you're able to finish the first part relatively quickly. So either way, with that aside, now the first month, or the first pair, I guess, August and September, by far the biggest thing you should be doing right now is finishing your current affairs backlog, because I can't emphasize enough how urgent this is, because every single month that you wait, every single month extra that you take to cover your backlog, the backlog will build. And so ideally it should be like number one on your priority list right now to clear your current affairs backlog. How do you clear your backlog? Well, you'll have this thing called compendiums being released by coaching institutions. A compendium is basically all of the important current affairs happenings of that particular month condensed into 100 pages, 120 pages, 150, maximum 200 pages. And that's all you have to do, I would say. You will hear from other people that you should do newspapers as well, you should do daily current affairs. I mean, if you have the time to do that, you can definitely do that as well. But I'm assuming if you're on a 4 month time crunch, you don't really have a lot of spare time, especially if you're a school going student as well. So in that context, I would say you should do largely only compendiums. I myself didn't read newspapers at all, because the fact is, a compendium is a lot more efficient version of a newspaper. There'll be maybe like one important thing per day in that particular day's newspaper. The compendium will give you all of that, will give you just the important things, not the unimportant news stories, all within 120 pages. So I would say it's just a more efficient version of a newspaper. And so therefore you don't need to read a newspaper, especially on a time crunch. So the way you tackle your current affairs backlog, um, for I would say go backwards. Don't start with December. Start with the current. I think the most latest would be July, not August compendium. The July compendium should be released by now. Um, Take the compendium, finish that as soon as you can. Then June, then moving backwards until you're at December. Then your backlog is completely finished. I wouldn't say you need to memorize anything necessarily. So what I did was, I didn't have a backlog. Firstly, I started in March. So I mean, I did have a backlog, I guess, technically speaking, but it was only 4 months, so I was able to cover that fairly quickly. But the point is, I for each compendium that came out in that month, I would read it within that month, and then once again, I read all the compendiums again in November to just sort of revise all the stuff that I had already learned. I didn't make notes, I didn't memorize anything, I just read it once. And I think that's really all you have to do as well. I do think it's a bit unrealistic to expect you to memorize 1,000 plus pages for all the 12 months of compendiums. Um, and especially, I don't think you need to memorize either, because CLAT will give you options, because it's an MCQ based paper. It'll give you options. And so you don't need to memorize something. You don't need to be able to recall something from scratch. You need to be able to recognize it among four options. And therefore, the threshold of how much you need to memorize is a lot lower. And so I do think that just reading the paper once, while of course there are different methods of reading as well. If you just read blindly, you won't remember anything. But if you read with attention, then I do think just reading once with attention will be enough for to ensure that you are able to recognize the right answer among the four options in the actual paper. So that's what I would say for current affairs backlog. The second thing you have to do in the first month or the first leg of your preparation is that you need to get used to the CLAT exam pattern as well. And for that, I would recommend giving two mock tests per week. That will be 4 hours per week. I think you can dedicate at least that much time, even if you're a school going student. 2 hours per day for, like, let's say once on Sunday and then once on Wednesday or something of that sort. I think you'll be able to dedicate that much time. Uh, if let's say on Wednesday, if you come from school by, like, I don't know, 3 p.m., assuming the worst case scenarios, you come back at 3 p.m. You give the mock at, like, I don't know, 5 to 7. You still have a lot of time to finish your school work, to relax, to analyze a mock test, all of those things. So the point with all of this is that you need to get into a habit of giving a 120 question 2 hour mock test in one go while reading dense bodies of text, because you will have passages in your CLAT question paper. You'll have a passage and then 5 questions or 6 questions based on that passage. So you need to be able to read a lot of text within that 2 hour period, and not get drained or not lose your stamina in that. So to build your stamina, you need to start taking mock tests as soon as you can. It doesn't matter if you don't know what you're answering yet. It doesn't matter if you score really low either, because the point is not to assess your conceptual understanding as of yet, or your practice as of yet. The point with giving mock tests, at least in your first leg of the journey, is to make you get used to giving those mock tests. So don't get disheartened if you score really, really low. Just give the mock test for the sake of giving mock tests. And you can find mock test series from basically every major coaching institute as well. I would say they're all of roughly the same level of quality as well. Just pick whatever one works best for you, or whatever is the cheapest. There's really no, I wouldn't say one of them is particularly better than any other. But that'll complete the first leg of your preparation. Now coming to the second month or the second leg, which will be September and October. By now, you should have finished, if not all of your backlog, at least a significant chunk of your backlog. You can take, I don't know, like let's say half of the second leg as well to finish your backlog if you haven't finished it yet. But that is a hard deadline. I can't emphasize enough that you cannot let your backlog stay past, let's say, the end of September. That is an absolute hard deadline because you need those 2 months, October and November, just dedicated to practice. You cannot let that backlog stay in October as well. So I don't. It doesn't matter how big of a backlog you have to get it done by the end of September. And I would say it's doable as well. It's not that hard of a thing to do because even if you're taking 1 week per month of the backlog, you have 8 weeks in August and September. You have 4 weeks in each month. You have 8 weeks, and you have 8 months of backlog as well. So you should be able to cover by the end of September very easily. Um, but the first thing is you need to be completely done with your backlog by the end of September. And now that you have a bit more spare time, that is, you're not spending that time doing the backlog, you can now use that time to do sectional tests. Notice that we did no sectional tests in the first leg because the urgency of the backlog required that. But now that you have a bit more spare time, I would recommend giving sectional tests as well alongside your usual 2 mock tests per week. Uh, but this particularly sectional tests, I would say one per day is enough. I don't think you need to do more sectional tests. If you have the energy and the time, again, if you're a dropper, then you can do more sectional tests as well. But if you're a school going student, at least give 30 minutes a day, for sectional tests. You can give one sectional test. Uh, and let's say if you're giving one sectional test um, per subject per week, you have 5 days, you can do it. And then the other 2 days, you can do mock tests. That way, you'll have you'll be doing some form of practice every single day about something or the other, and that's important because practice ultimately makes up the bulk of your preparation. Abhi, it feels like half you're doing current affairs, half you're doing practice. The first 2 months are current affairs, the other 2 months are practice. But that's only because you have a backlog. If you started earlier, then you would be spending the majority of your preparation just practicing because ultimately CLAT isn't a memory based exam. It's not going to assess um, how much you've memorized because the only memory based section is current affairs. Baki, every other section is based on some form of practice because it's some form of logical reasoning. Even like legal reasoning is logical reasoning in a legal situation. Maths is also, I would say, it's on the bedrock of logical reasoning, assuming you of course know the basics of the concepts like percentages, ratio proportions, vagera vagera. English also, I would say, is just another flavor of logical reasoning. So all of these, there is nothing to memorize per se, right? It's all just different forms of practice. And so the fact that you'll be getting some form of practice every single day by giving mock tests and by giving sectional tests as well is really important. So even if you've not finished your backlog, I would still say try to squeeze in one sectional test per day as well because again, it's just 30 minutes. An extra 30 minutes of your time would not do much. It wouldn't harm you a whole lot. So I would recommend getting into the habit of practice as well. That's the first part of the second leg of the journey. Then, if possible, try to amp up the mock test to 3 mock tests per week as well. Um, but I say if possible because more than the number of mock tests, what matters is the detail in which you analyze your mock tests. By mock analysis, what I mean is that are you looking at exactly where you went wrong, how you went wrong, how you can avoid repeating that mistake again in the future in a future mock test. If you're not analyzing your mistakes properly, if you're not able to understand why you went wrong in this particular question, you're really just wasting the mock test. I mean, the entire point of giving practice questions, attempting practice questions, is that you're able to analyze them and see what mistakes you're making. And so, if you're not analyzing them properly, if you're not giving enough time to analyze them, there is really no point in giving the mock test. And so, um, if possible, give more mock tests, but if not possible, focus more on the analysis part of it. I would say it definitely should take you at least 2 hours as well just to analyze the entire mock test, um, just as long as it takes to give the mock test. Um, because you need to look very, very in depth about every single mistake you're making, why you made that, um, and making sure you don't avoid it, you don't repeat it in the future. So the second leg will be sort of like a transition period. By this point, you would have completely finished your current affairs backlog, and you'll be starting practice as well. And alongside this, I want you to build the concepts as well that you'll be applying in that practice. So before you start practice, let's say take 1 week. I think you won't need more than 1 week. Learn all the basic concepts for all the practice that you're going to be doing. So by basic concepts, I mean that, um, let's take logical reasoning for example. Logical reasoning has two parts: critical reasoning and analytical reasoning. Now, for your seniors, I recommended just doing critical reasoning with very little focus on analytical reasoning, because that's how CLAT was in the past few years. But then your immediately preceding batch got a CLAT with entirely just analytical reasoning and zero critical reasoning. And so I don't want you to take that risk, of just doing critical reasoning without any sort of AR. So um, I would say that your preparation for logical reasoning should be 50-50. 50 for critical reasoning and then 50 for analytical reasoning. Um, what is critical reasoning? What is analytical reasoning? Critical reasoning is you're given a passage, and you have to look at, basically analyze that passage. What is the main idea of that passage? What are the arguments that the author is trying to make? Um, which of the following points would strengthen the author's argument? Which of the following points would weaken the author's argument? What is the conclusion that the author is trying to draw? All those sort of things. That's critical reasoning. Analytical reasoning is more like the conventional logical reasoning that you think about when you think about competitive exams. It's what's asked in CAT, for example, all those sort of exams. So it's like, blood relations. Ki ex's dad's sister's grandmother is my what? Very poor example, but that's blood relations. Or coding decoding. So like if in a code language, A is equal to Z, B is equal to Y, and so on, what does, um, I don't know, Shourya mean in the code language? That is coding decoding. So stuff like that. What do you think of conventionally as logical reasoning? That is analytical reasoning. Um, so for both of these, you need to have a strong foundation for both of them. Um, critical reasoning you can be done with in 1 hour. I would say the concepts they're very, very simple, very simple. You can be done with them within an hour maximum. The actual time consuming thing is analytical reasoning, because you have a lot of topics to cover within that. um, I wouldn't say it's hard. It's not hard. It's just very, very tedious because there's so many topics to cover. Um, you can just look at any playlist on YouTube for analytical reasoning. It'll have coding, decoding, blood relations. Um, what else is there? Number sequences, uh, Venn diagrams. I don't know, stuff like that. Um, any playlist really will work, but the level of analytical reason that's asked in CLAT is definitely easier than the one that's asked in, let's say, CAT. But the concept is still the same. So look at any playlist on YouTube for analytical reasoning, and that should be enough for you. If there will be topics that eventually won't come in CLAT, but you can't take that risk. You have to prepare for everything, because CLAT does not give you a fixed syllabus. So it's always better to be prepared than not to be prepared. So to sum it up, the second leg of your journey should have, by this point, it should be finished with um, your backlog current affairs ka. You should use the spare time you now have, because you're not doing the backlog, to do sectional tests and to build conceptual clarity for those sectional tests. Um, I told you about logical reasoning. For legal reasoning, you could, I guess, you could learn the basics of law, but I don't think you need to, because CLAT never, at least ideally, if it follows its own pattern, it will not ask you um, substantive law questions. It will not ask you about law itself. What it will give you is it'll give you some legal principle in the passage, and then it'll ask you to apply that principle in the succeeding 5 or 6 questions. So let's take the principle of, I don't know, mens rea, intent in a crime. Mens rea is basically like the guilty intention behind a crime. It'll give you a passage about mens rea, and then it'll give you 5 or 6 questions about mens rea. The point here is that you will learn everything about mens rea that you need in order to answer those questions from that passage itself, and therefore you don't need to really know anything about mens rea beforehand in order to attempt those questions. So there's very little conceptual like foundations you have to build for legal reasoning. um, English also, I think, is mostly just common sense. I mean, English may, I don't know what exactly to say as conceptual foundations. If you're able to understand my video right now, this video, then you'll be able to understand the English in the CLAT paper as well. It's not it's not insanely difficult English. It's just basic, like our normal academic English, I guess. Um, and bacha, maths, quantitative techniques, maths. You really I think the highest chance of topics that they're gonna come. Uh, that's for ratios and proportions and percentages. My paper was ratios and proportions and percentages as well, and it's really simple. Like, my God, it's like sixth grade mathematics. Like it just look at my CLAT 95. It's just sixth grade mathematics. Um, you can do other things as well, and I would recommend doing other things as well. But your focus should be on ratios and proportions and percentages, and particularly within that, your focus should be on calculation. Rather than the concepts, your focus should be on making sure that you don't make silly mistakes, you don't make calculation errors. That was the thing I struggled with the most by far. So that's what I focused on the most as well, because you won't get a calculator in the exam. You have to do all those calculations manually. And the actual difficulty in the exam, in the math section, arises not from the concepts, but from the calculations that you have to do. So there's very little conceptual clarity or conceptual foundation that you have to build for any section except logical reasoning. And logical reasoning, I told you already. So these 3 things that you have to do in the second leg of your journey for CLAT 7. Lastly, the last leg, that is October and November. In this part, by now you should be clear with current affairs as well as your logical reasoning foundations, and you should be doing the current affairs regularly as well. That is, you should not be letting the August, September, October backlog build. Ideally, you'll be doing that the exact month that it comes out. And by now, you'll have some stamina for mock tests as well, because you've given a substantial amount of mock tests by now as well. If you're following my advice and doing 2 mock tests per week, by now you'll have at least 12 weeks gone. That's 24 mock tests done already. That's a huge amount of mock tests. So by this time, you should have a general idea of how the CLAT paper is. You should be able to understand what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. And so this final leg of your journey is about that specifically. It's about your strengths and your weaknesses. Take the last month or the last 2 months and focus solely on the strengths and the weakness that you have. Focus solely on fixing your weaknesses and making your strengths even stronger. So, like I just mentioned, my weakness was mathematics, and particularly within that, it was calculation. So, let's say I was giving CLAT 7 right now. I would spend the entire last few months, like at least 80% of my work in those few months would be on that weakness, which is calculations. I would be doing random calculations just to get that skill up on par with my other skills in the other subjects. Uh, I would be looking at the mistakes I'm making. I'd be looking at why I'm making those mistakes, and really honing in on the specifics of my particular preparation. Because by now, I think you've done by now all the general things that you have to do. Now is the time for specific, personalized strengths and weaknesses. And so this entire last leg of your journey should be focused entirely on bringing your weaknesses up to your strengths. And to do that, you'll have to give sectional tests, but give more sectional tests for your weaknesses rather than for, of course, your strengths, because you already have them mastered. And there's only a limit to how much you can master them, So you now take that extra time for other sections, for the section that you're lacking. Uh, and that should really be it. I mean, continue doing the 2 mock tests per week as well. Um, but the other rest of your time should be just practice. Like I said, CLAT is mostly just practice. So all of this spare time that you have, focus on practicing as much as you can. Don't ignore the other sections as well, but do focus really, really significantly on your weaknesses as well. Um, and if you follow that, I mean, by the end of October or by halfway through November, I think you will start feeling confident as well that wow, you've prepared a lot in these 4 months. You started from zero, and now you're already, I would say, you're 95% of the way there in just 4 months. I do understand that starting from scratch right now would be a bit terrifying because you have just 4 months left, and this exam is going to decide your entire life from now on. Um, but firstly, it won't decide your entire life from now on. There are backups available. If you're, for some reason, God forbid, but if you're unable to clear CLAT, you can give CUET and then you'll do a bachelor's separately, and then you can do a 3-year LLB. There are 1,000 different backups available for you. So firstly, your life is not ruined if you don't get CLAT. Secondly, CLAT is not such an exam where you need a lot of studying. You don't need a lot of studying because CLAT does not have memory as its main, the thing that is testing. There is not a lot to memorize. There's not a lot to know to give CLAT. And so even I, for the majority of my preparation, was just doing a lot of practice. I was done with my concepts and my current affairs backlog very, very early on, and so at least half my preparation was just repetitive, boring practice. So that's what you do. CLAT may, there is very little to memorize, right? I know I've said the same point multiple times, but I'm trying to emphasize this key. You'll be fine even if you start late, because there isn't a lot to do in the first place. Even if you started earlier, what you would be doing is just more practice. But there's a limit to how much better you can get from practice, So I don't think you're missing out a whole lot if you're starting right now compared to, let's say, somebody who started way earlier, like March, जैसे मैंने start किया था. I do think it would have been a bit more difficult, sure, but I do think I would have still be able to clear CLAT very, very easily. Not very easily, but with just a little bit more effort than I was able, like more than the effort that I put in my actual exam. If I started a little bit late, I do still think I would have been able to clear CLAT, even if I started later than I did. And so please don't stress कि यार मैं अभी start कर रहा हूँ, 4 महीने बचे हैं बस, कैसे करूँगा? हो जाएगा. I just told you कैसे हो जाएगा. The entire past 30 minutes was just कैसे होगा. So basically what I'm trying to say is have a bit of faith in yourself, have a bit of faith in your abilities, the fact that you'll be able to do this, and I guess have a bit of faith in me as well and all the advice I'm giving you. And I guess with that, that's all from my side. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel and pressing the bell icon as well. If you have any suggestions, queries, doubts, requests, please put them in the comments below. I'll try to answer them either in the comments themselves, or if I think they deserve a separate video of their own, I'll make a separate video for them as well. And with that, that's all from my side. Bye bye, and I hope to see you in NALSAR next year.